What's up? We're back. Episode 5, Not Your Best Round. The return of Mr. George Andersch, professor, founder, Fargo BJJ. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back.
All right. Now, I went digging through the archives. I was a little unprepared last time you were on with pictures, but I got some good ones. And I found this one. How old are you in this picture? And where is this? This is you. And for those of you that don't know, it's Carlos Gracie Jr., BJJ legend. So where was this and when was this?
I'm not even, let me see. That looks like Ricardo Almeida's old school.
So would that be Jersey?
Yeah, that's in New Jersey about, I don't know, 2005-ish. I mean, I'm a purple belt.
So you maybe training 5 years, 6 years at the time?
Yeah, about.
Okay. Was it a seminar class? Was he just like dropping in?
This was not to sound all cryptic, but this was a secret seminar that Henzo that Henzo put on. Like literally, this is like literally that Henzo put on at Ricardo's, or they brought Carlinhos into Ricardo's, but it was only brown belts and up, and it was all Henzo's top guys. So guys came from everywhere, like even the old school guys, like Sean Alvarez was there, and a bunch of stuff. And I remember that specifically because I was the only purple belt there. Everybody else was brown belt and up. And I was allowed to partake in like one day of training, and then the other day I had to sit out, but I filmed everything. I actually have that was a whole weekend, 2 or 3 days. I actually filmed that whole thing. I have it on like VHS cassette somewhere in a box. And that was a pretty instrumental period, because that was right when we were starting to do I mean, it was instrumental because all those great people in a room, obviously with Carlinhos in from Brazil, but that was the time that we were just starting to push teaching jiu-jitsu from a curriculum, from like a written curriculum, which nobody was doing back then. Like a lot of people don't realize that Amal and Ricardo Almeida were two of the pioneers of teaching jiu-jitsu from a written curriculum, like a structured curriculum, not just, because before we started doing that, I don't know anybody that was doing that. That was something that Amal was pretty adamant about from early on, because he used to, and it was pretty unprecedented, because not only was people not using a structured curriculum, but they were adamantly against using a curriculum, because when we started saying we wanted to do it, we took a lot of heat from everybody, saying that's not how you teach jiu-jitsu, that's McDojo shit and all that kind of stuff. So Ricardo and Amal are two of the first people to really spearhead that structured curriculum, which is funny because everybody teaches from a curriculum today. I mean, any school that's legit today, that's considered legit, has a documented structured curriculum now, but it was completely 180 back then. And we were working on it for a couple of years at that point, or Amal was, and I think we were implementing, and it's like a real precursor stuff to what we're doing now. But I remember that meeting, because Ricardo, after that was all over, they pulled, the plan was to pull Carlinhos to the side and demonstrate the curriculum and explain to him how we're doing it and all this kind of stuff. And they took like the whole end of the afternoon and they went over it with him, and he was super impressed. And I remember specifically, he said that he's been teaching jiu-jitsu his whole life, and now he said something along the lines of, now my students are teaching me how to teach jiu-jitsu. He said it was amazing. So yeah, it was a pretty cool event.
That's awesome.
And if you ever get a chance to sit in a room with Sean Alvarez, and he's the best storyteller. I mean, you think he's probably second best next to Henzo. I don't know if you know who Sean Alvarez is, but he's one of the old school black belts. And man, he's a great storyteller, man. The guy can tell crazy stories. Awesome.
Rad. All right. Well,
did I answer the question? I don't remember what the question.
You did. Yeah, you did. Because I found that picture and I was like, I have no idea where this is from, but I know George is going to remember. So, and I know.
Yeah, I remember that trip, because that's the same trip I caught. I didn't. That's the same trip I got. I was walking around New York City in flip flops, and I wound up coming home and had the only time I ever had staph. I got cellulitis in my calf.
Walking around New York City in flip flops.
Yeah. And it was stupid, because like, especially being from there, I should know better. But like, I came back and wound up getting cellulitis in my calf, but like not from the gyms, obviously.
Yeah,
but
just from just from generally New York. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a great trip because we stayed. I don't know. Did we stay at Ricardo's? I don't know. I think we stayed at Ricardo's, and I remember we went to Ricardo's and ate breakfast at his house, and his wife made us all awesome breakfast and stuff. It was cool.
That's awesome. Well, I know last time you were on, we kind of went through a lot of just kind of your history and background in jiu-jitsu, and this time we have a list of questions from students, and we've been getting a hard time from some folks. So we've been skipping some people a little bit. So and they let us know, man. So Matt's got he's got a list of some questions. We're just gonna start throwing them out there.
I wanted to start with it's a two-part question. I think we answered the first one last time, but I'm just going to ask it again because, again, we're getting heat from people about how we're not getting their questions here. So, and they're all really good questions. So I want to make sure people continue to ask questions. But so Michael asks, if you could go back in time and give any advice to your younger self when you were early in your training, what would it be?
Well, we talked a little bit about this last time.
I think so, right?
And I think that, even after thinking about it for a little while since then, it would still be the same answer. Like, I would just try and take better physical care of myself. Like everything I did, I loved everything I did. I wouldn't change anything. I would just try and be healthier, not take so many bad injuries that were unnecessary, and basically that, that's this, that'll always be the same answer, I think.
And so his second question here is kind of a hot topic question, but with businesses on the verge of reopening in North Dakota because of the coronavirus, what are your thoughts on incremental reopening, class sizes, structures, etc.?
Well, I mean, the ultimate goal is to just go back to the way it was, but when we, obviously it's going to be a multi-phase operation, and it all depends on what requirements are mandated. Of course, we'll try and follow the mandates. And, we posted the other day about like, we're not reopening and some other gyms are. And, when we talked about that behind closed doors, we made that decision. And I don't know if anybody's gotten to you guys, but I've gotten several emails and messages on Facebook saying that like, I haven't had a single negative response. Everybody was like, right, good answer, right choice,
right.
And they really appreciated it. And, and like, when we were talking in our coaches meeting, there's an aspect of maintaining the level of what we're doing too. We're not going to compromise what we're doing to jump through all these hoops. If we can't legitimately provide the service to our standard, we're not going to open. So when we feel that we can open and provide the mandated requirements and still provide like the jiu-jitsu experience to our level of standard, we will do it. And of course all of the mandated standards will be in place. Everybody is cleaning and we'll probably have smaller groups at first. Everybody will be spread out. We'll probably be doing single partners for a while. All of the things that we talked about, that we've talked about behind closed doors. We haven't really announced anything publicly yet, but we have multiple versions of this, and depending on how it happens, determines which one will actually engage. But I mean, I think just being smart and re-implementing everything as it goes.
I think being part of these meetings, what maybe people aren't privy to is how much we talk about this stuff. And we've had some pretty lengthy conversations where we want to get back to do jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, we're a student first, people first community. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right things for the people. And, is it right going back right away where, I've looked at a lot of this stuff from not only my main job aspect, because we're the bad guys who get called in to enforce this stuff, but also as, an interest from jiu-jitsu is, okay, the doors are open, but there's a lot of restrictions. And I think what some people don't understand is if we were to open right away, we wouldn't be doing jiu-jitsu because of the requirements. Come in, only a certain number of people, you have to be at least 10 feet apart from you. Well, so what are we doing now? Right? We're basically doing a home workout at the jiu-jitsu school, right? So, I 100% agree with you is that, man, let's just wait a little bit. You know, what's another couple of weeks? I think you wrote that in your post, and where we can actually come back. And okay, it's not going to be what it was right away, but coming back and at least being able to train with somebody, right? Because that's what I miss about jiu-jitsu. You know, I tried to do the dummy workouts and all that stuff, and it's just not the same. Right? I want to be able to go to jiu-jitsu to do jiu-jitsu. And that's really what we're waiting on, is when is it safe enough for people to come back? And when can we actually do jiu-jitsu, right? And that's an unknown. We don't know. I'll tell you, it's
Right.
not going to be tomorrow.
For sure. You know,
At least my opinion, but
no, I agree 100%. You know, like, especially if we're expecting people to pay, like right now, there's a lot of gyms that that keep their members paying, and they're trying to provide some kind of online thing. And to me, it's all just jumping through hoops. You know, like we nobody's paying right now. We have a you know, a couple of, I think probably 24 or so people that have volunteered to keep paying just because they want to keep promoting the gym, and that's awesome. Thank you to all those guys.
absolutely.
But you know, like I'm not gonna, you know, especially if, you know, we expect people to pay for something. You know, like if they're gonna pay for something, I want them to get more than that value out of it. And I just don't see like how them coming into the gym and just doing a workout they can do at home. You know, but the problem is, like, it's our particular style, it's our particular business. Like, of all the businesses that exist globally, this is probably the number one thing that is the antithesis of everything that's going on right now.
Right. Right.
You know, because jiu-jitsu is literally crowding 50 people into a closed area, wrestling and sweating on each other. I mean, it's the exact opposite of what everything has got to happen right now. So,
right.
and like, it's like, how do you work around that? Like, the answer is you can't, man, you can't,
Right.
you know? And so, like, it's just, we just got to wait it out, you know, and like I said, like, as soon as we feel that man restrictions have lifted enough that we can start having like a legitimately credible functional workout happening in the gym safely, then we'll start making it happen. But
Absolutely.
you know, pretty soon.
Yeah.
It's coming soon. It's almost over. I mean, we're getting ready to turn this thing around here.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to kind of ramp up to some questions here, but you talked about it. You got into it a little bit here with your story, and that was a story that we talked about at the end of the last one, that actually, after we stopped recording, you brought it up, but it was talking about how Amal and Ricardo were the first ones to kind of start the curriculum. So my question is, how did it come about that you started instructing for Amal?
How did it come about that I started instructing, just in general?
Yeah.
Well, it was one of those situations where I think we just needed. I mean, there was just some people that needed, and like I knew I wanted to get in. I wanted to be in the in crew, you know, the in crowd, so to speak. You know, I wanted to be one of the main guys, and like I love training. I'm there all the time anyway, and I wanted to help out. Well, excuse me, because it was. I mean, I wanted to do anything I could to make sure the gym was as successful as possible. So,
Right.
and also I didn't have any money. We covered that in the last one. So like I didn't. So there wasn't a. Like, it's interesting because there wasn't a. Almost the entire time that I trained, I never paid. You know, because you know, I started working for him in some capacity almost right out of the gate, and I started training. I started teaching a class, you know, in exchange for tuition. Probably, I might even still been a white belt. I mean, I don't know. Like, you know, definitely by blue belt, I was teaching for sure. And you know, and you know, like I said, like we touched on it a little bit on the last one. You know, there wasn't too many guys there at the time. Amal was very active. He was traveling a lot and competing and going to Brazil, going to New York. He's doing all these things, and so he was always in and out. And Jay Jack was teaching a lot, but he couldn't do everything all the time. And just everybody stepped up and helped. You know. And so that's basically how I became one of the coaches. And then like I was just one of the first guys, just got absorbed into the group through osmosis.
Yeah, I was listening to I don't know if it was an interview or how it was, but Elliot Marshall, who teaches out of the Denver School, Easton affiliate for those who don't know, he was doing one of his podcasts, and he was talking about, to your point, and I think people don't really realize this, is you kind of have the same story that a lot of these other guys have, where he said when he's looking for instructors at his school, he's looking for guys who he sees you all the time. Like you're there more than he's there, right? So, oh dang, this guy's here in the morning, he's here in the afternoon, he's here at night. And that's what his advice is. I want to see you all the time. You should be there so much that I'm wondering if you have another job, what you do outside of this place, because you're there so much. And like that's how you become a coach, right? And so to your point, is it's you're around, and it's not necessarily that you had this, you were going to be an instructor, but you were there enough where they're like, hey, you're already here all the time. Why don't you coach? And that's how you became a coach. That's kind of how it worked out for myself as well. Is I was at the noon class, and I was coming to the noon class, and we needed an instructor, and I was like, well, I'm already here. I think I was the most senior belt at the time. Why not? And then 10 years later, here we are.
And that's how it happens. I mean, especially when you're talking about those anytime any kind of organization and anything, Rob could probably attest to this, like in business or whatever, corporations, that in the military, like in the Navy, they call them plank holders, like in the SEAL teams, like the first member of the new team. That's called a plank holder. And, it's when something is brand new and it starts, that first generation that comes up, they're going to be the leaders. Like as long as they make it,
Right.
as long as they don't take off. Like everybody that's a coach now, or that's somehow involved, or most of the people, because we've been around for a while now, but like most of the top people in my really close circle are just the first generation of people, second generation of people that when we started open, and it's just like the thing, like who are the top students? Well, they're the first guys, obviously. It makes sense. So all you got to do is not quit. So everybody everybody that didn't quit is now running the show.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just the way it's going to be, for the most part.
Right.
And, so like, I just, to like in Easton, I just happened to be one of the earlier generation guys, and I never left. I just didn't quit. I just stayed there. And I say this all the time. Like I was never, cause we talked a little bit about, I was older than most people when I started. So I was never going to be world champion. I wasn't one of the best guys. I just was there from the beginning, and I just never stopped coming. I just didn't quit. So like, and that's how I have everything, I'm not a world champion, didn't win like big shit. So I just went through the experience with all the guys who did, and one of those guys that are always in the back of the photo,
But you're there,
Yeah, I'm there. I went through it and just, and it's cool. I love it. I was never really like, and we've talked about this, Matt, because one of like, especially moving out here, and like we've had this discussion in the office, like I'm not somebody who ever saw myself as the guy. I didn't want to be the king. And, we talked about this more than one time, in the office when we've had hit like obstacles or crossroads and running the gym as a business. And it's like, man, like, I don't want to be the guy. I'm a team guy. I always wanted to be part of a team. That's why I liked it down there. So what it was, one of the hard things for me coming to Fargo was, I was by myself, and I was the man. I was running everything. I had to make all the decisions. And like I was like the representative of jiu-jitsu in like North Dakota now. And it's like, man, I just want to train. I just want to train and compete, stuff like that. I don't want all this pressure. So, but, and for a while it was tough. And like so I had to like relearn how to do everything, learn the business, learn how to do everything other than jiu-jitsu, and train everybody up until I finally found the right people. And like, man, we've been open for 12 years. And how many people do we really have? Half a dozen or so, like really inner circle people, probably a dozen coaches total. It took 12 years.
Yeah.
It took 12 years to get that many.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about that, of how many, like how long does it take for a jiu-jitsu generation to kind of establish itself?
And then those people got to want to be involved. I mean, like a lot, not just because people train jiu-jitsu and like for 10 years, doesn't necessarily, I mean, look at Dave Tofty. Like he's first black belt. He doesn't want to teach, he doesn't want to teach a class. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the business, like he just privately, he does privates and helps. He picks and chooses his proteges and skyrockets them, but like he doesn't want to be part of the mass production cycle.
It's crazy to me to think about how, and I'm the same way, but in your example, and something we talked about before is, think about how you just were around and there was an opportunity for you to instruct, But then fast forward, 20 years later, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of the things that you've had in your life are because of jiu-jitsu. And, would you be able to, what's the, how did I put it? I put it some way where if somebody was to come to you and say, hey, I want to write you a check. I have a blank check right here, and I want to write you a check where I automatically attain all of your jiu-jitsu experiences, all your knowledge, everything that you've gotten as a result of jiu-jitsu, skills, memories, all those things. How much would that be worth? And, I think if you ask anybody probably who's been doing it for more than 5 years, they would say, I can't write that check, right? It's priceless.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yep.
Like, I mean, at this stage in my life, I can't even imagine like what I'd be doing if I didn't come across jujitsu. I can't even imagine. I can't even speculate. I don't know what I'd be doing.
Right.
I know what I'd be doing. I'd still be stuck at freaking IT. I'd be working in a stupid IT job.
Punched over some desk.
Bad back, bad neck, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't be there either because that wouldn't have lasted regardless. The only difference is like I would have been on the street instead of having something else to do.
Right.
Yeah, you would have ended up like Dewey coming in at lunchtime and just strangling people. going from the help desk and then just like clap.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that'd be it. I'd be Dewey.
Do you have any significant memories that stick out to you as your time as an instructor, whether it's in Colorado, Fargo, wherever?
Most of my memories of being a coach are bad, like me messing up. Like I remember no, seriously, like
yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
We've and again too, this is a conversation we've had over the years too, because like when you first start training, especially young in your, not age, but young in your belt level, like you go through this evolution of like what kind of coach you want to be, what, like, you're still worried about learning yourself. There's always the stress of, do people take you seriously because you're only like a blue belt teaching, and there may be higher ranking people in the class. And we've had that issue, especially when I went to Denver and we started growing, and I was a purple belt still running the program as a purple belt in Denver. And there was brown belts, and like then when Busy came from Brazil, to be the figurehead of the gym, a black belt, I was still the primary coach, and because we were running a curriculum by then, and Amal wanted me to make sure that Busy was on with how we were doing things based on the curriculum. And he was a new black belt just from Gracie Barra in Brazil, just came up. And you can imagine it was an awkward position, like it was, he's this black belt from Gracie Barra, just came from Brazil, thinks he's a shit probably because he's a Brazilian black belt in America. And, when he came in, and then there's this purple belt that's got to explain to him how the curriculum works and all this kind of shit.
Some fucking gringo,
yeah, some gringo, but to his credit, man, like he was awesome with it. And, he helped me out a lot. I interacted with him daily from that point on, and like he became one of my primary coaches after that. He's got a wicked guard, and I mean my side guard today is still like his side guard where you arm drag across in the closed guard, still my primary guard that I do. Yeah. So it just, and like going through that process of figuring out what kind of coach, because you don't know, and like you think so you have all these ideas and you try them, and then you biff them really bad, and you're like, God, I sounded terrible. And I think back to some of the speeches I've given in front of the class, and I'm like, God, I can't even think about it. It's freaking embarrassing. And I'm like, what the hell did I just say? But which is why you should have a structured thing to talk, scripting, man. Scripting is where it's at. But yeah, like until I found out who I was going to be and what kind of coach I wanted to be, and everything. So, I think that's one of those things you got to go through as a new coach, in anything.
Yeah, I think, to your point, and why I said, I have no doubt, is when I was thinking about this question myself, is the thing that haunts me the most is when I mess something up, and I told Rob this when he started coaching. I said, here's the deal. There's probably only 3 people in the room who know you messed up. Me, maybe if you're sitting off to the side, and then Rob. Nobody else knows that you messed up. So you just got to keep rolling with it. But at those moments that just haunt you, or you said like you gave some stupid speech, I remember one time I was trying to give like a, hey, let's all be nice to each other speech, and everybody be everybody's friend, and let's have good training, and slap
And that's
bump and
coming
all
from
that
Matt,
stuff.
so he doesn't mean it.
Yeah, no, but I was trying to like give that speech, and at the end of it, everybody was like stone faced, right? And I was like, oh fuck, what did I say? I don't know. I thought that was pretty good, and I think you were heckling me about it or something. You're like, I don't even know what you were talking about. And so after, this is when Lily was still there, and
You
so
gotta work the
after
bugs
like,
out, yeah.
later I asked her about it, and she goes, yeah, it was funny. My mom was in the waiting area there, and when I walked off the mat, her mom was laughing, and she said, Mom, what are you laughing about? She goes, the coach just called everybody an asshole. They said, hey, all you guys are assholes. Quit being assholes. Knock it off. And she goes, yeah, you're all assholes. So you got the asshole speech. Good job, Lily. And I was like, that wasn't an asshole speech. Man. All right. Well, I got to work on my asshole speech, I guess.
I'm trying to build culture here.
Yeah. But
Yeah, well,
I might have said, look to your left, look to your right. If neither one of those people are assholes in your mind, then you're the asshole and knock it off. But
oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that speech. I was in that class.
See, that's Matt's take on there's the classic, like anybody who's been coaching for a long time knows there's classic speeches that like go around. Everybody says them. They're all the same. You just kind of tweak it to fit you,
Right.
And that's the basic speech of, like, if like when you talk about Matt bullies, like look to your left, look to your right. Do you see the person you don't want to roll with? If you don't see him, it's you. It's one of those kind of things, but like everybody customizes it to themselves. So like you just got to work on that customization a little bit. Everybody takes the stories and they make them their own over time.
All right.
Just don't throw me under the bus. I was sitting here watching a class that Matt was teaching one time, and he's talking about this collar choke, and he's like, now keep in mind that like Matt's never trained with anybody but me, like everything, right? So I'm his coach, right? So then he's like, so he's talking about this coach. He's like, when I first learned this move, like I learned it like this, but I don't like that. I think it doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah. So, and I was like thinking, I'm sitting right there. I'm thinking to myself, son of a bitch, like I taught you that move. What the hell are you talking about?
he's like, actually, I don't think that works.
here's the story. It's the progression from side control to high mount. And I remember that you taught it, and you taught it a certain way. And what would happen is that you would hit it on people. And so as soon as they went over, you would sweep them out of it. And I asked you about it one time, and I said, hey, I keep getting swept by you. This was later on, years later. I said, I keep getting swept by you. What's the deal? And you're like, oh, you don't put your head over there. You put it over here. And I was like, well, the only reason I would put my head there is because you told me to put my head there. So that was the story where I was like, oh, he's just setting me up to sweep me every time, and he's not telling me that I should put it over here.
He just laid a trap for you 5 years down the road. That's some black belt shit right there. Where he's just like,
yeah, I think that's what it was. It was like, I'm not going to teach you the whole move so that I still have it on you.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still got the counters in his back pocket.
I'm willing I never withheld any information from anybody.
I'm willing to admit that maybe I didn't get all the details at the time, but fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I love this question. It's a little off topic, but we'll get back on topic afterwards. So Dirk wrote in, would you rather fight one hippo-sized turkey? And I was thinking about this. I don't know why it needs to be 50, but this is a unrealistic question to begin with. So, or would you rather fight 50 turkey-sized hippos?
Well, 50 turkey-sized hippos or a hippo-sized turkey?
One hippo-sized turkey.
I mean, turkeys ain't that small, man. I wouldn't want to fight 50 turkeys.
What's a turkey gonna do?
Dude, they have they got spurs.
I've been attacked by turkeys before. The turkeys are terrible. They're like gangbusters, man. Well,
they're just like running around Moorhead, scaring the shit out of people, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, there's the turkeys."
I think
that they just run around people's yards.
I think that's a no-win situation for me. I don't think I can beat either one of them.
Well, you got to pick. You got to pick one. And then you got to
Well,
adjust your strategy.
I would have to go with the 50 turkey size hippos. You know, if they were like 50, I mean, turkeys, I mean, man, like if they were like 50 like Shih Tzu size hippos or something, that'd be a little bit better at least.
Okay, maybe
You
I
know,
should
well, and
change that. Yeah,
the reason why this makes me so nervous is because just recently on Facebook, I took a test where it says how many 7-year-olds could you beat in a fight. You ever see that? Did you guys get that on your?
No.
Yeah, I
And-
scrolled
and
past
your
it, but
internet's
I'm
different
curious
like that,
what.
You fill out a whole survey and it tells you, you know, like how do you like to fight, like all this kind of stuff. And it turns out that like after 37 7-year-olds, I would just get overwhelmed by sheer mass, right? So and a 7-year-old is way smaller than well, that's about the size of a turkey, I guess. And you know, so like 50 turkeys, there's no way. And you know, and 7-year-olds don't have like spurs and hook beaks and shit. So like, there's no way. I'm not gonna beat a hippo turkey or a turkey hippo, and it doesn't matter.
It
No
makes
win
me
since you're
think-
setting me up for fail.
It makes me think of that barbecue commercial where the guy's going around just slapping the shit out of everybody. Like you just walking around a preschool just slapping the shit out of kids, and then eventually you just
Yeah,
get
but
overwhelmed,
then-
and they
yeah.
just take you down.
He's good for like the first dozen or so, and then he starts to slow down, and then it's just like Dawn of the Dead, where he's got all these 7-year-olds on
Just
top of him.
sheer mass takes
just
you down.
overwhelmed by sheer mass. That's the way
I
it
love
works.
it. I love
It's
it.
the ant strategy.
I was listening to an interview with George St. Pierre, who apparently he is just into all sorts of wild stuff.
George
So they asked him, "Would you rather fight a pack of gorillas or a pack of monkeys, a group of monkeys?" And he said, he goes, "A pack of gorillas, absolutely, 100%. I've talked to an anthropologist about this, and the gorillas, they're not predatory at all as far as like where they're at. So their land doesn't really matter. They just travel in packs, so they're nomads." And he said eventually they'll just accept you as long as you don't really cause them any harm or they don't fear you or anything. They'll accept you as one of the pack, and then you just move along. He said monkeys are fucking crazy. He said the first thing they do is they rip off your genitals so you can't reproduce. Then they rip off your
Talking about
face.
chimpanzees.
Yeah, they rip off your face so that no one can ID you. And then they start breaking all your fingers so you can't get away. And then they just start eating you, I guess. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've read
Dude,
some
they're so terrifying.
documentaries about chimpanzee wars, because chimpanzee packs will literally go to strategic war with each other, and they take prisoners, and like they do like slaves, and like it's crazy. Yeah, you're right. They go right for the nuts. It's terrible.
And they're like abnormally strong for their size. Like everybody says that, like when they work with like in TV, when they work with a chimpanzee on a set or something like that, and they have to like hold its hand or like pat it on the back, that everyone's just like horrified with how like dense they are. Like they're like made out of like corded steel or something. And then when they get upset, that they're just like so strong that it's like, what are you gonna do? You got nothing. You're just like you're just made of meat. That's all you're gonna do. You're just gonna get ripped to pieces.
They're
Dude,
crazy. I used to work in an exotic animal refuge, kind of like with like big cats and bears and shit. And like man,
hold on. You worked at an exotic pet rescue as if you were on the Tiger King documentary. And this is
I've never seen Tiger King, so I don't know what that is.
nearly 6 years, and this is the first time this has come up. I knew you played bands. I knew you've been in the military. This is the first time this has come up.
And I've done a bunch.
Yeah, we got to learn more about
What
George
did
Exotic
you do
here.
at this exact? What did you do on this sanctuary?
Well, actually, I didn't work. Me and my remember I was telling you
Don't
about
change
my
the
roommate, Sean.
story.
We used to just volunteer and help out and help raise, because the one I worked at wasn't open to the public.
Was this
So we. What's that?
This was a Boulder?
Yeah, that was one of the things I did when I first got there. And one of my that same buddy I trained with and eventually became my roommate, Sean. He used to volunteer, and we used to do things like because it was a whole ranch. It was huge, just like acres and acres of shit, and they had all kinds of animals. We used to volunteer with the animals a little bit, but we used to take people. We used to take people that donated money I don't even think we were supposed to do this because it wasn't open to the public, but we started a nonprofit, and we used to take people out there to like look at the animals really quick, and then do like a class, something like be able to identify like birds or tracking. We used to teach like tracking animals and like how to start a fire, like with just wood and shit, like no matches, matchless fire and stuff like that. Just things like that you can go out for the afternoon and do. And we would just take the money and just give it to the refuge place. Good stuff.
That sounds really awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We did that for like a year. Because I didn't have a regular job, so we just did regular things, and then we would take a couple of bucks, and that was it.
So Daniela wanted to ask, or she brought this up in the last one, but I think it's almost more appropriate here. So her first question is: are there times while coaching that you observe students and it helped to determine their individual characteristics?
I don't understand the question. Like,
you mean like,
I guess the way that I interpreted that was, is it helpful to know what drives them? Is it helpful to know, whether they're shorter or longer as far as limbed? Maybe they have a wrestling background. Are there times when you see students and you're helping them by maybe what's based upon characteristics, physical attributes, rather than just giving them what you're giving all the students?
When, we have, like, when they first start training, I think that, everybody goes through the curriculum like standard.
Right.
I don't think you'll start getting into attribute-based training until you become more advanced. I think it's important for everybody to be well-rounded and learn everything, even if it's not something that you may perceive at first as something that might be for you. Because I've seen way too many times people that, like, you look at them and you wouldn't think they were good at something and they were really good at it. So, like, I think a lot of this attribute-based jiu-jitsu talk, I think a lot of it is in your head. I think if you learn something, if somebody just tells you to learn something and you learn it and nobody ever told you, oh, you're not supposed to be good at it because you're short or tall or whatever, I think you're pre-sabotaging that person. I don't think people should even, I don't think that the concept of like body type specific jiu-jitsu should even come up until like they've been training for a while. And a lot of times, like, let the people determine it themselves. Like I said, like in the last podcast, one of the best trianglers I know was this guy Forrest, and like you'd look at him and he was like a Bailey, like, dude, man, like you'd never think that guy would triangle somebody, and
right.
He was like, he triangled, like when he was like a purple belt, he beat a black belt in like one of the tournaments. Triangle. I think he triangled him. So yeah, I mean, super strong legs. I mean, like, you just never know, and like I don't want to undercut someone or cut somebody short like before they get a chance to maybe make something happen for themselves. So, I like to stay pretty strict with the curriculum and just learn the generic jiu-jitsu, just the well-rounded game. And then when you start becoming, plus you need to have a concept and understanding of what's going on. Like you can't, like a white belt or blue belt. I mean, I don't think they have the capacity to make that determination, what would be best for them at that point yet, so that's why I say by purple belt, man, like you should have a good idea of like where you're at and you could start really dictating your direction. But it'll take white to blue to just, master the basic curriculum best you can. I mean, like there's nothing really. I think attribute-based jiu-jitsu concept is a little overrated because the only real technique I think that's really attribute-based is triangle. There's some people that just really have a hard time doing that, but there's almost nothing else. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, that really body type hinders you from doing something. I mean, can you?
Yes. But at the same time, what you said just now was really making me think twice about this because I obviously wrote out this question. And so I was thinking, okay, what are some examples for me? And I think that almost putting people in a box a little bit to your point where you said, so I would take Daniela, for example, and I would say, I would look at her and she's very aggressive. She has a huge gas tank, right? And she doesn't know how to quit, which is awesome. So I would say, okay, if I saw her maybe doing a pressure pass and, like an over-under style pass, and it wasn't going well for her, I would say, hey, here's the deal. Like, that's one form of passing, but that's probably maybe not your best attribute based passing. I think that you should be more of a movement based passer where you're continually going side to side. You know, this concept of buzzsaw passing where you're being aggressive and you're constantly throwing, you know, 3-4 different passes at somebody, and eventually they're not going to be able to keep up and you'll pass that way, as opposed to, you know, me where, you know, I'm not very fast, right? But if I get in close like that, I will smash you to death to pass, right? You know, but at the same time, you know, I think about myself where I would have never guessed that I would be a knee slice passer, because like, no, that's not my thing. It seems more like, yeah, okay, it's a little pressury, but it seems like more speed because you're relying on cutting one way, smashing the other way. It's a lot of movement back and forth, very much like a Toriando or something like that. But within this last year, from PANS 19 to up until the pandemic this year, I was primarily doing knee slice passing. I was very rarely doing double unders. So I almost put myself in a box and limited myself, to your point, where, man, I kind of feel like, should I give her that to just say in the beginning, like, hey, you know, like, instead of you just kind of scrambling a little bit, let me give you something. But at the same time, maybe I give her that and then she just focuses on that, but never learns a smash pass. But maybe all along, she was bound to be great at smash passing.
You see, this is where opinions can vary, and it can really take an effect on someone, because like where you say that you don't think she should be smash passing and you think that she should be more like fast and loose, I look at her and she appears to me to be the template of smash passing. She's strong and she's
Yeah,
strong and driven, and like she looks like she just wants to smash the shit out of people.
Right.
And you know, so you know, but the fact of the matter is, like at her level, I think she should just be working all the basic passes, because you got to give her time to develop those passes. I mean, like you can't show her something and in just 3 months down the road, when you clearly don't learn it, that like you're not going to make it work at that, you know, after that short amount of time. You can't just say, okay, it's not enough time. Like you gotta, you know, and those are the kind of things that I would like to see evolve organically from the person. I try not to, at that level anyway, I would try not to try and direct, like take someone off a path and stick them on another path. I'd really like for them to find that out themselves, you know, but the only way to do that is for them to just work something. And like the best things, and you know this because you've been training for a long time, the best things you do now are the things that you were killing as a white belt. You know, the things that I do the best now are the things that I was doing great as a white belt.
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
so like this is the time period that like you got to figure all that stuff out, you know, white and blue. If you have somebody interfering with your evolutionary process too much, I think it kind of robs the person of that process. So, you know, and we've talked about this a little bit too, where I've said before that like you've asked me questions. It's like you teach something in a class, but when I watch you train, you don't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You said that to me before, not with everything,
Mm-hmm.
but with some things. And because I think that there's a certain amount of value making someone go through the evolutionary process, like the way I do certain techniques now, it's because I've been doing that technique for 20 years and it's evolved over like me hitting obstacles and that were unique to me. And now I do it the way I do it now because it's the way it works best for me. But that's not the way I learned it, and it may not necessarily be the way I teach it. Sometimes I teach the techniques the way I originally learned them, not the way I do them now. And because I think it's important for the student to go through that evolutionary process for themselves, because they may end up at a slightly different variation than me. But that's not what everything. Some things I think the evolutionary process might be more universal, and then I just show the end product, you know, to save them from going. Because like, you know, as a coach, you know, you want your students to be better than you, faster than you got there.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the way it should be. Every generation of students should be better than the last one's faster, you know.
Right.
And because they don't have to go through the same freaking problems that you did. You can cut through that. But I think it's important. I think it's important to make them go through some of the problems, You know what I mean? And that's all I mean when we had that conversation, or whenever that came up in the past. I just think sometimes, depending on what it is, and it may be unique to the individual too, but like sometimes I think it's important that somebody goes through that process themselves to figure it out. Because then when you figure something out and you really work through it, man, you own that shit afterwards. Like you really get it, rather than someone just telling you something.
Absolutely.
Like if I told you how to build a freaking like a motorcycle engine, if I just walked you through it like one time and did it for you, it's going to be different than if I said, here's the tools, take that shit apart, put it back together. You'll figure it out.
Yeah,
you'll figure it out. It may take a while, but you'll figure it out, and then you're gonna fucking know that engine inside and out.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's same idea, I think.
Yeah, I think we've had that conversation over the years, but it's slowly starting to make sense to me in the last few years. Is that I think something basic as a triangle, and I've explained this to different students. As I said, there's a, let's call it 10 steps. I don't know how many it is, but let's call it 10 steps to a triangle. So if I only teach you the 6 steps that I use 90% of the time to finish my triangles, because that's the way I actually do it 90% of the time, then you're not going to know those other 4 steps that you may need because you're different than me, right? And so, I'm going to teach you this way that works for most people, but I'm also going to give that to you. And like you said, with the engine is, I think the goal for everybody should be to kind of make jiu-jitsu their own, right? I mean, that's the genesis story of Brazilian jiu-jitsu anyway, is it was given to the Gracies, and they're like, this doesn't really work for us. Let's take these techniques and make them work for us, right? So people got to keep that in mind. So we're giving you this triangle, but really take that triangle and make it your own. So maybe you learn a different way to finish it, where you're wrapping the leg, or you're wrapping cross body, or the way you manipulate the head is not something we necessarily teach, because I think it is, like you said, about that engine where you're going through, you're learning about it. Now you're making that triangle your own, where we could almost call it the, I don't know, the bend angle versus the triangle, because you've almost made it so much different by making it your own. And that's really the beauty of jiu-jitsu, I think.
I don't want to mislead anybody that's listening, because we're not saying that like we just show you a basic thing and then like you're just on your own to figure it out. Like if you're having problems, like as you develop, we will give you and show you because all of the problems that you're going to run into, I already know what all the problems are going to be, but if I try and tell you, it's like, look, here's the move. Now, when you do this, like 15% of the time you're going to have this problem, somebody's going to like mess it up, and then you're going to switch to this thing, and then like 10% of the time somebody's going to do this to mess you up. Like it's too overwhelming context. They don't have the context yet, so they have to take the basic format of it, go out there on the mat and roll and train and blow it a bunch, and blow it like 15-20% of the time, and say, so they can come back and say, man. And when you come up and you be like, yeah, so Ben, how's that triangle working for you? And you're like, oh, it's pretty good. But like 20% of the time, people do this fucking one thing that's fucking me up. And it's like, okay, see, now he's ready to take the next thing. He's got context. Right. Yeah. So then it's like, okay, when that happens, I grab my foot, I do this, I shimmy and leg or whatever, and like we adjust the lock. Because if you would have told him that at the first time, it would have just went right over. He would have forgot it, and like it never would have applied. So, Absolutely. But now he'll remember that shit. Now we'll remember. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So here's my question: is let's take Daniela here. So she comes up to you and she says, "Hey, we're doing up down outs at the end of class, and it's you pass the guard, you win, and I can't pass anybody's guard. I need some help. What do you say?"
Well, man, you have to look at who's like, I understand what she's going through, because like we're using Daniela specifically as an example. And my advice to her would be, man, first you gotta fucking relax, man. Like she's still pretty new. Like she's still fairly new, is she's still a white belt?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, she's still a white belt, man.
Certainly on track to get her a blue belt, but yeah. She's still, I think 3 stripes.
Yeah, she's a white belt. She's a girl that's training with all the tough guys. I mean, she comes to all the tough trainings. I mean, she's training with the killers, so she's like a white belt girl who's training in the killer room, and she's complaining that like she's not doing well. It's like, man, like, chill out with that. Like, she's
Yeah, but
doing great.
that's her personality in a
That's her
nutshell, though.
I know,
That's
personality.
why
that's
she
gonna,
is the way she
why
is,
she's,
because she
why
still
she's
thinks
gonna be
that way.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to be careful because those are the kind of people that they burn out and they don't last too.
Yeah, I think to your point though, it's like people, other white belts are like, I'm not doing great against these rooms. Us color belts get together and talk about like, geez Louise, like what are we doing with all these guys in here? I mean, they're just white and blue belts, but man, they're giving us a hard time. So just keep
Yeah.
that in mind. We've been training a long time and we're talking about it. So the fact that you're talking about it.
Yeah, you
So
got to.
it's not necessarily.
It's the old adage: complaining goes up, not down.
Right.
Like
Right,
the white
exactly.
belts will be complaining, and the white belts complain to everybody because there is no down. But
Right.
like the white and blue belts, but like, man, the blue belts, like if you're a white belt and you think you're not doing well, just keep in mind there's a bunch of blue belts getting together somewhere privately saying, man, that fucking guy, that's a white belt. Jesus, he's going to be
Yeah,
a beast.
Yeah.
It's the same
they're
thing.
just like,
Like,
man, we need to get that guy a blue belt because I'm tired of giving this guy he's
you
giving me
know,
a hard
and
time.
he talked about it. The purple, brown, and black belts talk about it too. We're like, Jesus, that blue
Yep.
belt, he's giving me fits. He's only been training for 3 years, making me
Absolutely.
crazy. And yeah, it's like Jesus. But that's the goal. I mean, that's what we should. That's what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do. We just complain about it privately.
It's good. It's all good. All right.
It's funny because I tell everybody, like, they're like, "What do you do?" They're like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I teach as many people as I can to kick my ass as fast as I can. That's what I do for a living." And they're like, "What?" Yeah.
I love Kurt Oceander's thing. Is like he tells people it's like raising snakes. They're eventually going to grow up and bite you, but you just have to be okay with that. And it's like, yeah, that's what we're doing. Is we're raising all these little snakes, and eventually they're going to grow up and they're going to bite us, and we're just going to have to be okay with it. All right. Second question: do you have an exceptional example of a time that you mentored or taught someone and were overwhelmingly pleased with the improvement of the student's knowledge or skills?
Holy cow, man! I don't know.
How about you, Rob? You got anything? It says for all coaches.
I don't know. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I bet, man. I mean, I've had a lot of people in my classes. The thing is for me, I taught fundamentals mostly, fundamentals and intermediate stuff. I never was an advanced coach. So if you went back to Easton's and looked at a lot of their black belts that are the younger black belts that are kind of running the show now, like Ian and stuff. Like when Ian came up to do the seminar, he kind of mentioned the influence I had on him, which number one, like I don't think as a coach you ever really know that,
Right.
and two, like I was the guy, I mean, there was better guys than me teaching that were really working hard with guys, like I was I was more of a general fundamental instructor, but so like I basically just set the foundation for everyone, and then they went off to like Jay or Elliot or Amal, stuff like that, to really get honed in. So I can't think of, like, I never trained anybody specifically for competition or anything that I can remember. I mean, I don't think so. The only custom stuff I used to do, it was always mutual. I was always like getting as much benefit out of it. And then like I worked with Reed in wrestling a lot, Jay, with the MMA stuff. I was working with we had a brown belt that was a member of the Dominican national team for judo at Denver. And he was my primary judo coach for a couple of years, and I worked privately with him. But that was more of like for my benefit. I mean, like I didn't, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Since she brought it up, and I'm going to bring this one up, and I think you'll agree with me, probably across the board here, but I think that her performance, Daniela's performance at the last Fargo Open, was a good example of that, where, she was coming in, she was taking, I think, all three of our classes. I know she was coming into your Tuesday nights, George, and I think you primarily coached her at that event, but just to see her as a white belt, I think she was fairly new at the time, maybe 4 or 5 months at the most. And she had some really tough matches. There was a gal who's been training judo. I know she's a judo black belt from France, maybe. that she went against on a couple matches. Just did
Oh yeah.
really,
Remember
really
that.
well.
I refed those matches, so
Yeah.
it was really hard for me because that was the first time I'd refed a tournament, and it was really hard for me to like be in ref mode while I'm also like, she takes my fundamental classes. It's like, you want like you have to just sit there and just like watch jujitsu and like be a ref and like be objective and like not, same thing. Like it's like you want to say something, you're like, nope, I'm just gonna sit here. I gotta shut up, like I'm refing right now.
Yeah.
And like,
Got to be impartial.
yeah, you have to. And it was,
Right.
yeah, I agree. I think that call out too of like because those were really gritty matches. It was like, there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of like, reversal of positions and sweeps, and it was just like it was an intense match to watch anyway. Like several of the matches were pretty competitive.
Yeah, like in
I
all
think
honesty,
that's
anytime like a student does well, like or it doesn't do it, like it. I was thinking more back from the Easton days, but like even now, like thinking about it a little bit, like I remember like the first generation I had in Fargo when we first moved. It was like Dave Tofty, it was Darren, we had Dan. Remember Dan Morgan, Doug, and so like that first. It's weird. Like it seems like your first generation is always like really like tough and like fight oriented, because like I was teaching all the classes and like was spending all the time with them. Everybody that came in first seemed to be a little bit more than just recreational. You know what I mean? Like that original crew was pretty tough, and everybody wanted to compete and all that kind of stuff. Jason, there was Ben, bunch of guys. So I remember I remember telling the guys, because like there was no jujitsu yet in town. We were the first ones, and so they didn't have a context there. They never saw it before. They didn't know what competition was going to be like. And then we did something local, like the Fargo Open or some shit. I don't remember what it was, but the first competition, and when I used to when we used to do like competition training, and I remember telling the guys, it's like, look, like get in this position. When you do this, the person is going to do this, and then you do that. And then the person, like when you get into, like I was just walking them through how the fights were going to go, and everybody was like, well, how the fuck you know what people are going to do? It's like, oh, listen, like you're going to do this move, and then you're going to do it, and the person is going to put their hand here. Just trust me, blah blah. And then I remember after the comp, then everybody did really well, and then I remember Dan Morgan came up to me after the event, and he was like, he was totally blown away, and he was a judo black belt too, so he wasn't like lost to like grappling and shit. He was like, I couldn't believe it. He's like, everything you said they were going to do, they did. Like, it was amazing. Like, he thought it was like magical to him or some shit. And like, and everybody said, they were like, holy crap. I was like, yeah, man. It's like, I'm not making this shit up. I know, but they're going to fucking do, you just got to fucking listen to them. And they were like, yeah, man, that was awesome. Like, they were just totally blown away with that. So I remember that specifically because of the effect it had. Like, I remember that's when they were really sold. They were, like, and as coaches, like, because you both teach fundamentals or both have taught fundamentals. And one of my favorite things, like I love teaching fundamentals. I mean, I love advanced jujitsu. I love really tweaking like good guys games and stuff like that. But man, I really like teaching beginners because I love seeing the aha moment. Whether it's the first couple of days, couple weeks, a month or so, but that point where like you see like they're hooked. They just took the shot. Like they're hooked. This is it. Like their life for now, the aha moment, and they just fall in love with it. And that, like, I love seeing that, and most people have that obviously in the fundamentals program. So that's always my favorite experience, with all the students for sure. The aha moment.
All right. So we talked about this a little bit, and it leads into the next set of questions here. But and I think somebody else asked this, so I'm just going to bring it up again. But let's say I'm a 4-stripe white belt, and I come up to you and I say, hey, what should I be working on to get to the next level? What would your advice be? We're on that like 3-4 stripe, yeah.
Well, for us, like we have like a pretty standardized, the path to. There's not a lot of deviation unless you're like really a phenom, like you're just coming in like 7 days a week and you're just killing it. But it's the curriculum. It's the curriculum. Like make sure that you have all of the basic positions. your attacks and defenses from your basic positions, and you understand a pretty well-rounded game. You know, that you don't have any holes anywhere, and that's all laid out. You know, there's nothing mysterious or opinionated about it. Like, we have our white to blue curriculum, and yeah, you know, the only way that anybody deviates from that is if there's some kind of special case, like, which would most likely be like a competitor or something like that. If somebody has just got some kind of phenomenal background before jiu-jitsu, like wrestling or judo or something like that, and they come in, they're like already just killing it, and they want to be a competitor, they want to be an active competitor specifically, and like, you really can't justify putting them in there against, you know, your average white belt. You know, then there may be some concessions have to be happened. But the thing is, the thing I want to point out is everybody's happy because, like, in those situations, they're progressing faster, but you're going to have to pay the price at the end anyway. Like, you pay the toll at the beginning of the road, or you pay the toll at the end. You know, like last podcast, I talked about how I got my blue belt in like 15 months or some shit. I was like the fastest blue belt, you know, at the time. But what I didn't say is I was a fucking blue belt for 3.5 years after that. You know, so like, it all balances out.
Right.
You know, and you know, so I was the fastest white belt and like the freaking slowest blue belt. You know, so it all balances out, man. And like, the one thing, like, if you ever start getting like anxious about like timelines and shit, which like you really shouldn't, but of course people are human, they're gonna want to, you know, that happens sometimes. But like, you got to take a step back and look, and you can be like, what's this all gonna look like in fucking 10 years? Like, is like getting my blue belt in, you know, 18 months or 20 months or 24 months going to matter in 10 years when I'm a black belt? Did that really matter? You know? And like I said, like, if I get my white belt faster than normal, most likely just means you're going to be sitting at blue longer, you know? So,
right.
You know, and, you know, so it all balances out, you know?
I remember when I think I was a 4-stripe white belt, and my promotion was taking longer than I thought it would be, right? And so, not unusual, where it was taking the appropriate amount of time. I was just anxious, and, you know, I thought that it should be happening sooner. And I talked to another blue belt, Joe Caveney, at the time, and I said, "Hey, man, what's going on here? I don't know. You know, I at the time it was, and it's back to the structure now, but 2 stripes. Once you got your second stripe, you could go to the second class, the intermediate class. And so I had gone from going to 2 classes, or 1 class, till I got my second stripe. And then I did a time where I did both the fundamentals and the intermediate class. But then I kind of fell out of it, where I was like, you know what, I just want to come and I want to learn all the cool stuff, and I want to train at the end of intermediate. I don't have time for fundamentals. I got it all figured out, right? I've been doing this for a couple months. And he goes, well, how often are you coming to fundamentals? And I said, well, I'm not. I don't need that anymore. I have my second stripe. And he goes, see, that's why you don't have a blue belt, is because that's your mentality. He said, start coming regularly to fundamentals, and I guarantee you'll get that blue belt in no time. And sure enough, I started coming, and I think, you know, a couple months later is when I got my blue belt. So, you know, whether I was going to get it or not, I don't know, but it was probably the help of just going to that fundamentals class, being seen at that fundamentals class, and also getting those class credits that helped me out.
Caveney said that?
Caveney said that. Yeah, I just talked to him today, man.
It's legit.
That guy's awesome.
Good advice.
Yeah. I haven't seen him forever.
Like anybody
Hit
that's
him
in
up
that
on
situation.
Facebook.
Anybody in that situation, that's probably the answer.
He was definitely the guy where I was sad to see him go, because he was one of the OGs back in the day. Didn't you say he was like the first guy to come in and be like, hey, what are you doing here? Are you doing some jiu-jitsu? Like, before you were even open? Wasn't he the first guy to come in?
He's the first guy that I connected with before I even, like, when I started kind of like shooting feelers into the Fargo area from Colorado. He was one of the first guys that contacted me and really made a connection. When I used to when I used to drive up to Fargo for long weekends to kind of just start meeting people, you know, over the course of that year before I came. And he was the guy that used to link up with me and, you know, bring me around and introduce me to people and shit. We used to meet and go to the old ATA Taekwondo school, which was right across the street from where we used to be on 13th. Because that's where a lot of the guys, like, they had kind of like most of the hardcore people at of the area at the time kind of like took over that place, and
Right.
somebody somehow had a key and they would go in and open it, and like all the freaking people would train and shit. So I would go in there and train with everybody. That's how I met. Yeah, that's how I met Joe and the old school people like Bruce Nelson and
Cool.
guys like that. They used to come and train with me and meet up.
Wait,
And,
you knew Bruce? I used to work with Bruce when I got it done with college. I worked with him at a debt collection place when he was like, because he was going and fighting on the weekends. I was like, "What are you doing this weekend?" He goes, "Oh, I'm gonna go do a fight." I was like, "You just gonna go fight some guy?" He's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was when I first started. That's how I ended up working some of those MMA fights for like max fights and stuff, because we all worked together at this debt collection place in town. That's how I met like him and Dylan and Damien and all those guys. And I ended up doing sound for a bunch of fights. That's how I met a bunch of like that's how I met a bunch of people in the jiu-jitsu community before I started training.
the thing that was funny was that most of those guys didn't want to train. Like almost none of them. As a matter of fact, I didn't really get any of those guys. Like remember, I was talking about how I had a lot of people on the list ready to go when I finally moved here to open, but almost none of because they were all like the MMA interested guys and everything like
Yep.
that, and most of them didn't even want to train with me. Like I don't know what it was. Like they'd rather do like their Bassroot and CD workout shit, whatever they were doing over there. It was great. But it's okay, like whatever. Joe was cool. He helped. He got me kind of set up a little bit when we first moved here.
All right. So next one is, I'm a blue belt, same thing. So, I'm a blue belt. Maybe I got a stripe or two. What should I be working on to progress towards my next belt?
Well, the way we like to explain it is when you first learn, when you do that white through blue curriculum, when you first learn, it's all like individual techniques. It's like this one move, this one escape, this one move, this one move. There's not a lot of systematic approach at the beginning. So like I like to see the blue belts take that same material that they learned white to blue and now start to put it together in like a systematic approach. So like I'm not just pulling guard and just throwing arm bars and shit. It's like I want to see like multiple choke combos with an armbar attack with looking for a sweep off the response. You want to start like building like attack, response, counterattack, response, counterattack. And we used to call it triple attack back in the day. And I like to see, because when you first learn jiu-jitsu, it's like everything's step by step. It's one move. Trying to do this, it's not working. Reset. Trying to do this, it's not working. Reset. Trying to get the armbar, it's not. We're trying to pull it with muscle. It's not working. So like it's not necessarily new techniques. Obviously, you'll be learning new stuff too, but you want to start transitioning from that step-by-step method of thinking to that more systems-oriented method of thinking where like now I want to get an arm bar. So if I want to get an arm bar, I'm not just going to grab his arm and try and physically pull it over because now we're fighting muscle on muscle and it's just one move. So now what I'm going to do is I want to start attacking the neck. I want to start get that front choke. That's going to make him bring his arms up, right? When he brings his arm up, I'm going to get that arm across, and then I'm going to switch to the arm bar or, I have the 2 choke combo, which makes him give me the arm bar in like as the third option. So like starting to think like more pre-planning, starting to think ahead and starting to take the techniques that you now kind of know a little bit and start organizing them in a way that like you can start making them more systematic and more like effective, and of course, you'll be adding, new techniques too as you learn, but like that white to blue is where a lot of your I would say that the majority, like 90% of people's jiu-jitsu that they're going to learn for their whole life is done in that first 18 to 24 month period, and then
Correct.
everything for the rest of your life after that is like refining,
Mhm.
and yeah, you're gonna lose. Like, I mean, there's so much jujitsu these days. Like, it may be, it may not be 90% now, maybe like 70, but yeah, and then there's, just refining, what getting it put together, finding the combos that like to work for you, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So this is the question that we were building up to. So it starts out, I've been training for 3 years now and I've never competed. Frankly, I've never been interested in competing. But now that I'm getting closer, and I guess in timeline, this person feels towards a purple belt. I'm nearing my purple belt. I feel like I'm not deserving of the belt. without having any type of competition success. What does a purple belt represent? Question number one. And then question number two is, what does competing have to do with being considered legit at any level? And I think you've already kind of answered, is what does the purple belt represent, right? It's being able to throw, seeing those triple attacks, being aggressive and different, not reckless, of course, but being aggressive in different positions, attacking, whether it be on the bottom or the top. Do you want to further on that at all about what a purple belt represents to you? Someone who has just
excuse me. It's not the Corona. There was a couple. There was a couple of questions in there, and the first thing I want to say is that the guy, whoever wrote that question, is making some preconceived notions that they're putting on themselves. They're putting some barriers on themselves, and they have to realize that they're doing that to themselves that may not necessarily be real, because they Absolutely, said that they think they may not be deserving of a purple belt because they never competed before. That's a self-imposed opinion. That's got really nothing to do with anything. If he feels that he needs to compete to get, or she, whoever it is, if that person feels they need to compete, then need to get their ass to a competition. I mean, there's really that's the answer to that question. If you feel like you should do something in order to be deserving, then go freaking do it. There's always competition to go to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. If somebody wants to be a competitor, like if somebody wants to be actual competitor and like be a decent competitor and actually go out there and they want to have a competitive career, then you should be competing before a purple belt. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely,
but yeah. That's something. And if somebody has aspirations or if somebody has specific goals like that, they need to be brought up to the coaches, because how I handle someone who says, man, I want to travel the country and do competitions. Like, man, we're going to take that person and have a completely different approach to them than if they're just soccer mom wanting to do jiu-jitsu for a cool workout,
Mm-hmm.
And,
Absolutely.
So like those goals need to be identified as early as possible. And but if a person just wants to do a competition once or twice, like, look, I think everybody should compete. Like, even if you don't want to be a competitor, you're not interested in competing. As a matter of fact, if you're not interested in competing and you're afraid of it or you're scared of it, you definitely should do it. Because that's what it's all about. That's what we're doing here. You want to know that you can go out there and face off against some stranger you don't know who's coming at you with not your best interest in mind, and you can stand up to the task. I mean, that's the most empowering thing. And so I think that everybody should do a competition at least once, just so they can say they did it and they can experience it, because it'll change how you approach jiu-jitsu. Like if you've only trained with your friends your whole career, which is what most people do. I mean, it's not necessarily there's anything wrong with it, but like if you've never like faced off, like I said, against some stranger who's coming at you, and like you really don't know like what you can and can't do. And it's an important experience for people to have. I think it really affects everything in your life, makes everything better. That's like I've always said, like people fight. The best thing you can do to somebody is put them in a fight. Like just throw them in the freaking alley with some dude and say, only one of you guys are coming back in. That's like, whoever comes through that door is
You've been watching The Dark Knight too much, man. It's like breaking up. All right.
Like both of those people, even the loser, they're gonna come out of that alley better people, man, for sure.
This mini apocalypse is messing you up, man. I think that are you like the new Mad Max, where you're like, all right, we got too many people on the island. Send 2 people out. Whoever comes back gets to stay. That's
the problem, man. Like that, like this is the way I've always been. It's just like now people want to talk.
No, it's okay.
No, it's not. Okay. This is the way I've always been. It's just nobody ever talked to me, asked me questions. Like now you're putting me on video, man. It's going like it's coming out. It's funny. It's like I was just I was just talking to Eric Lopez yesterday, and it's like, man, like I don't interact with anybody. I mean, my life hasn't changed at all. If it wasn't for the fact that Sarah and the kids are here in the house now, like my life would be the same. Like I don't interact with people anyway. So like I'm just bike riding and I'm going out, and like now that the warm weather is finally here, I'm kayaking and stuff. But like that's all I do all day, because like I don't have a job. I just run the jiu-jitsu. And so, Sarah's at teaching and the kids are at school, man, I'm just doing, gym business and during the day and coming and training at night. The only thing that's different is I'm not training, so
Yeah.
I'm sitting home with these crazy thoughts all the time.
So yeah, I just rounding that off, I think that absolutely it's competing. I think there's something that holds you accountable when you circle a day on the calendar and you say, I need to be ready to go on this day. And probably the worst thing that can happen to anybody is you go to a competition and you get beat by yourself, right? So, when you don't have that and you're just showing up to roll with your friends, you'll probably take a round off. You won't roll that fifth, sixth round that you think you need for competition. But just, knowing that you can make it through it, and then everybody builds up in their mind, like you said, these preconceived notions here of, oh, if I lose, I won't be able to come back to my school and everyone will hate me, and all these different things that people construct in their minds. And really at the end of the day, you'll find that people don't really care about that, right? Is that it's just a competition. So you go and you lose, people lose. Everybody loses. You look at even the best guys, Marcus Buchecha is considered one of the best in the world. He has losses on his record. Gordon Ryan is considered one of the best in the world. He has losses on his record, right? All these guys lose. And you're no different. You're going to lose as well. And so just getting out there, getting that experience. And I think for this person, do you want to be a competitor, or do you just want to know if you're a good purple belt? Well, then that's fine. You can go and compete and test yourself at world class purple belts, and to know if that you're willing to hang there, right? But that doesn't mean you need to compete or ever compete again. I don't have an issue with that.
Absolutely, man. And that's the thing too. There's a couple of good points there. When I used to compete, like I said, like the last time we talked about this, I never intended on being a world champion, and like that kind of stuff. I liked competing. I just wanted to be competitive, and I just wanted to know I was on par with the best people.
Yeah.
So I would enter the competitions, and I just didn't want to be the worst guy in the room. I wanted to win a couple of matches, get knocked out. I mean, don't get me wrong, I tried to win. But when you're running a bracket, like we talked about last podcast, it's not. I want to do the best I can, and I want to lose to somebody better than me. And I tell we haven't had a competition in a while, what do I say? Before you guys compete, it's go out there and do what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing that can ever happen is you go out there and lose and come back and say, frick, I could have did more, or I should have done this, or man, I shouldn't have held back. I hate hearing that. That's so disheartening to me, because I know people can, I know you can do better. I want you to go out there and do what you can do and win or lose. If you lose to somebody better than you, then it's a good win. I call it there's good losses and bad losses. If you go out there and just piss it away to somebody you should have beat, that's a bad loss. That's going to make me upset. If you lose to someone who's better than you, man, what can you do? I mean, that's part of the process, and so, and the thing is too, kind of like what you were talking about, part of this question is, I think that the people that are the peer group leaders in the academy, especially the higher ranks, the people that compete or do something more than just 9 to 5 in it, piking it, just coming to the class and that's it. The people that, even if they're not competing, but they're coming in and they're running drills and they make every circuit training and they do all this kind of stuff, the people that are putting in the work, whether it's competition or the extracurricular, they're the peer group leaders. I mean, they're the ones that people see what they're doing and they want to emulate it. And I've never seen in my life, here or at any other gym, or at least at Easton's, I've never seen competitors who, maybe they're guys who compete, but they don't do well. I've never seen them frowned upon or looked or mocked or looked down on. The competitors are the competitors, man. They're the ones that are carrying the flag and spearheading the whole program.
Right.
Out to the public eye, they're setting the example that other people want to follow. And but nobody asks what their record is or shit. Like, I mean, they're the ones out there doing it.
Right.
And I think they're
Right.
always
Yeah.
looked up to. I think they're always looked up to. Like you said, like look at the world championships, the like hundreds of guys, the best guys in the world. Every single one of them are going to lose except what, a dozen? Or not
Yeah.
even, or
Right.
there's not even a dozen
Yeah.
weight classes. I mean, like
Yeah.
there's like 8 guys that are going to win. Everybody else in the stadium is going to lose that day. And it's the best
Mhm.
people in the world. They all
Right.
lose, man. It's like,
Right.
I just
Absolutely.
wanted to, like, when I was competing, I just wanted to make sure that like I got past like the first 1 or 2 guys. Like I didn't want to be the fucking guy that went in there, got steamrolled. Like, look at that guy, he doesn't belong.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be competitive. I wanted to be considered, like at least the better half. And
Right.
that was it. I mean that's like the world championships and shit. Like if I
Right.
go to any other tournament, I want to win, for sure.
Absolutely.
I can't stand losing. I hate fucking losing. But there's times when you understand that, like, man, losing it's not bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said,
I think the times, like especially at competitions, like when especially people that's like it's their first tournament and they're nervous about it, and I had to explain to him, it's like, listen, if you come in on a Sunday or you come in on a Thursday night, you're probably going to experience training that's just as hard, if not harder, depending on who you're training with. This is going to be somebody who's likely close to your skill level, close to your age, close to your weight, and you guys are just going to go roll. And the thing that I try to encourage people is like, think of it as much of it's more of a mental test than a physical test. And the only time that I'm disappointed in someone, or like the times that I get upset, is if they're not in control of their emotions, and if they're not in control and like have that discipline for themselves, then that's where I'm just like, hey, what are you upset about? Like, be in control of, like, your the goal for martial arts in a lot of ways is self mastery, and being able to be in control of yourself and be able to put yourself in extremely difficult and mentally demanding situations and still be in control. And and I think it matters a lot when you see someone who loses, or has a tough match, and they don't, they're not slapping the mat, they're not do anything. They have their head up high, their shoulders are back, they shake the person's hand, and they go back to their teammates. Like, I respect that oftentimes more than seeing people win in poor fashion. I would rather see someone lose with character in a lot of cases, especially at the lower levels. Like, I want to see what your character is. And if you're out there and you're stretching yourself beyond what you think you're capable of doing, that's time well spent. And that in the adage of that, you go to a tournament, that's like going to a month of classes. It's totally true, because you're going to look at jujitsu differently. You're either going to be like, man, all right, I did pretty well, things are working, I'm going to have to get some confidence. Or you go out there and get smoked, and you're like, man, I got some stuff I got to work on, because objectively this does not work. So I need to go focus on this. And if you don't like to compete, that's totally fine. But if you have a taste for it and you want to compete, then you've got to be able to get pretty comfortable with being uncomfortable regularly in order to get better at those things.
Sure. Like I always tell everybody, like you probably heard me say this a bunch of times, your first tournament is always free. Like, that's what I say. So like, like no matter what happens, you can go in there. Like you mentioned, like not bad behavior, of course. I mean, like you mentioned, like people losing, slamming the mat, kicking shit over when they like. There's no for that with me. That shit will never happen in my gym. If someone started to try and do that shit, they would have a talking to, and if they can't keep it together, they're gone. Like,
right.
I
Exactly.
do not have any patience for not being able to control yourself. And I hate when I see people do that from other gyms. But I always tell everybody, like, your first tournament's free, man. You go out there, anything happens. Like, anything can happen, because you can try and prepare someone, and you tell them, look, it's going to be like this. You got to train harder. Like, the people are going to be coming at you harder. Like, but like they you don't get it. Like you can't simulate that. Like, you got to go out there and just do it one time. And every time somebody comes off their first tournament, the first thing I always say is, now you see what I'm saying, right? and they're like, yeah, they're like, okay, now I know why we got to do this and what we got to do. And like, it's like, okay, now we get started. So you got to go through that first one to just, I'm not going to waste my time with all this explanation. Just go do it, come back. You'll know everything that you need to know. Then we'll get started, kind of thing, mentally. And then from that point on, like when you tell them, look, you know, you got to do this and that, and they're gonna be like, okay, they're gonna listen to you, you know. Yeah, so it's good time, and that experience right there is kind of like what I was trying to touch on when we were talking about why I think everyone should compete. Like you gotta, you know, just in life, because that experience is it's going to raise you up a level in everything that you do, you know. And the more you do it, I mean, man, the more of an effect it's going to have on all aspects of your life, not just competition.
That's good stuff. So last one here, that's kind of in that same line is, so I'm a purple belt, and I come up to you and I say, hey, you know, what should I be working on? I have maybe my second stripe on my purple belt. What should I be working on to get my brown belt? What would your advice be?
Well, when you're starting to look at brown, now we're starting to talk about like you should probably already be a peer group leader, and you're starting to look at being like a leader and mentor in the gym. So there's a lot to it that's not just technique. You know, when I'm like white belt, blue belt, it's really just about like the jujitsu. Purple belt, it starts getting more, to me anyway. This is how I like to gauge it. When people can start putting things together, and they're starting to take charge, they're starting to take ownership of their training, and they're starting to take ownership of their learning process, and they're starting to be able to add things that they're picking up from outside the curriculum and make it constructive. What's up, baby? Oh, thank you. Okay, I got some chips. I'm gonna touch it in the mic, but I'll save them for later. Thank you. But you know, and I've said this before, like for someone to be like a truly adapted purple belt, I think should be at the point where they can really kind of be responsible for their training. You know, I like to think that any purple belt or above, by purple belt, if I suddenly disappeared tomorrow, like you will now be a lifer in jiu-jitsu, of course, but you can now reasonably well be able to dictate the direction of your training. You can recognize jujitsu, what good jujitsu is. Like you can look on the internet and see what good jujitsu is, what's bad jujitsu, what you shouldn't be doing, what you should. You know, you have a good understanding of the principles and like what, you know, like the direction your training should go, and you could be responsible for your own training at that point. You know, of course, you want to have mentors and things like that, or you can walk into a jujitsu gym and know what a good gym is, and you know what you're looking for and things like that. And yeah, and as far as the jujitsu aspect of it, you know, it's now again, it's continuing on with that, developing the systems oriented approach, and keep adding, you know, what works for you. And that, like, purple belt is where you really start devising. This is where I would start looking at like the personalized custom game. You know, the stuff that like that maybe you're attribute based now and things like that. Stuff that like if you're like a fast and loose player, you'll start heading in that direction. If you're a pressure person, you'll start heading in that direction. You'll start focusing on that and start maybe deviate and start maybe walking away from some of the other things that at this point, you know, are not really for you. You know, up until that point, like I think everybody should be spending time trying to develop the well-rounded game because you don't really know what you're good at yet. But by purple belt, especially by a good middle of the road purple belt, like you should know that now, and you're going to start. It's going to start being more personalized. You know, things like that, and start gravitating towards that. You know, the attribute-based game and the stuff that you're good at, the stuff you like. You know, and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. You know, working on, you know, we've talked about that before where, you know, guys want to do no gi. And you've said to me, hey, you know, if once you get your purple belt, you never want to wear the gi again, that's great. You know,
It's
go down
fine with
that
me.
road. You'll definitely get promoted. But it's where, okay, you have that base of where you understand all the different positions, all the fundamentals, you know, a little bit more. But now you can start really getting into, you know, if you want to get into leg locks, if you want to get into this, that, and another thing, great, that's up to you. And
Specialized
that's,
games and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how your jujitsu is going to progress. So, you know, if you're a purple belt and you're really stuck, you know, maybe that's something you should be looking at is, okay, you know, what type of systems do I have? And, you know, maybe that's some different PDFs that, you know, Professor George, you can put together for people to say, okay, you know, what's my system? And that's something I've been working with Coach Rob on, is just a guard system, is putting that together, a passing system You know, and if you guys have more questions about that, you can certainly ask us coaches what that means. But that's what we're starting to get into, is developing your own systems that are tailored to you. And then also, I really like this piece is something you said is, I've always seen the brown belt as kind of the giving back belt, where you're giving back to the community. You know, some people call it the coaching belt or the giving back belt. But once you get to that level, it's okay, now you've taken so much out of the cookie jar, it's time to get back to the cookie jar. And since we're very focused on our people and our community, that's very important that you're giving back at that level, right? So not only being good at jiu-jitsu, but also being a good person. That's good stuff.
Yeah, especially if we're talking about going to the brown, I got a little sidetracked into the purple there, but like the brown belt is to me, it's basically the junior black belt, because anybody who gets a brown belt is most likely going to be a black belt, you know. So
as long as you don't quit, right?
As long as you don't quit, man. Yeah. And well, I mean, you can say anything. Anybody who walks in the gym is going to be a black belt someday, as long as they don't quit. But
for sure,
you know, it takes 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, doesn't matter. Like, it just depends. Like I said, like at the end of the time period, like how much is it all really going to matter?
Right.
Yeah. So like that brown belt position is really, you're a leader at that point, and it's like, we're also looking at like, what are you doing as a coach? Like what are you giving back to the school? Like with the students, because most brown belts have at least some crew in the gym, each has, that is following them and things like that. So yeah.
Right. Good.
For
Good
sure.
stuff. All right. I think this is a setup question. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you'll hear about it after you answer. Bailey wants to know, pineapples on pizza. Do you love it or hate it?
I don't put pineapples. I like pineapples.
This is a divisive issue.
Yeah,
me personally,
split the nation.
I like to eat pineapple on very particular pizzas. My preference is what's known as a triple P in the Ash household. It is pepperoni, jalapeno, and pineapple. That's the triple P. It is a solid Friday night pizza, but some people don't like pineapple. I didn't like pineapple until I was probably 25, and then all of a sudden I just liked it. Liked it on pizza. And the only reason I liked pineapple is because my friend put it on a pizza, and I was like, yeah, okay, this works for me. And I used to never like it at all.
I don't know how pineapple works on pizza, but I don't really like pineapple anyway. I only like fresh pineapple. Like the only pineapple I'll ever eat is like just fresh, straight pineapple. I can't have like anything pineapple flavored or like cheap or canned pineapple or anything like that. Like it's pineapple, cut it open, eat it. That's the only way I'll eat it. And a pineapple on a pizza just doesn't combine for me, So I'm more of like a peppers and onions and like beef or ham kind of pizza guy. Straight Jersey shit.
All right, so we have some other questions here, and we're gonna have to, because we're gonna end up making a 5-hour podcast here, but we'll save those for the next one. But what I want to finish with is, I don't want to say the word prepper, but I mean borderline. Is you guys kind of got your own thing going on there, where you said you don't really leave. You guys are doing you got a huge garden out in the back of your house. You guys have always been growing stuff. You got any advice for people in the pandemic as far as, how they should be living their lives to be more prepared?
Well, I'm not anybody to be telling anybody how to live their life. That's for damn sure. But
why not? You gotta have some good stuff.
And I don't know,
probably one of my favorite like George Prepper stories is you came to the school one time.
I'm not a prepper, man. A prepper. And if you look at preppers, like I am not a prepper.
You came to the school and you had like a tomahawk axe. And you're like, hey man, check this out. Is this cool? Can I like carry this? Conceal this?
Oh, hatchet.
And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing carrying around a hatchet for? You're like, you never know when you need a hatchet. I just got it on me now. It's just on my belt. I'm just ready to go.
Did he have a carabiner?
I did not have it on my belt. Like typical Matt. This is like this cider storytelling. Like I didn't have it. I asked, like I have it on the console of my car, and I was like, can I have it?
Okay.
And you asked me, like, why do you want to have a hatchet in the car? And it's like, it's the homeless people. They keep sticking their hand and asking for money. It's like, whack. It was a joke, man. It was a joke. But And when I stop at the light, somebody comes up there, like they're coming up to me in like the parking lot, hey, you got any change? I'm like, but no, like it was the, no, I got I keep an axe in my car, right? I keep a hatchet.
It's funny until like now when like, or we actually get into a pandemic and it's like, hey, I need a hatchet. And you have a hatchet. I don't have a hatchet. I don't have any of that stuff that
I keep a bunch of stuff in my car because we live in North Dakota, man. Like I drive to Bismarck.
Does that mean I can just start rocking around, walking around like the Highlander because it's the pandemic?
Nice. Is that got a signature on it? Does that say Randy Jackson?
My team. So I just had my birthday, and my team was actually honestly trying to go and find some sort of Randy Jackson signed samurai sword to get me for my birthday, and I was like, I would have.
That is so awesome.
I don't know who Randy Jackson is.
It's a
he was one of the judges on American. He's a judge on American Idol.
What's up, dog?
And he's a famous bass player. Yeah, he played bass on Michael Jackson records and stuff. But it's from that movie.
Step Brothers, yeah.
All
right, man. You got anything else to say? Anything you want to bring up? Any good advice? Anything you want to say to the students, your fans?
Keep up the fire, man. Like, yeah, like this, like you said, like with the like, what do you do during this when everybody's stuck home, man? It's just like I posted, like the mission never changes. We can't go train, but that means nothing. You still have to get your workouts in. You still have to go out and do stuff. The weather's nice now. You can go, run trails, bike. Like I'm biking and kayaking and doing like all the stuff that like I want to do. I was thinking actually, like Sarah was just thinking I was crazy today because she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm on the computer on the maps, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm seeing like what like I want to ride like see what it takes or I'm looking at the path to like ride my bicycle to Bismarck."
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, she's like, "You want to ride your bicycle to Bismarck?" She's like, "Why?" I'm like, nothing else to do, you know? So like today, like, I think I'm probably going to do a test run on my bike. Cause like, I don't have the best bike. I just have like a Schwinn, the one that they sold at Costco a couple of years ago. It's just a mountain bike, and there's like, cause I was looking to see like what the trail route would be all the way to Bismarck. Cause obviously you can't ride on the interstate and stuff. So I think I'm gonna tool over to Castleton and back tomorrow. Just do a test run to make sure my butt can handle the seat. That'll be about 3 hours.
Dang.
And I think that's enough. I think that's enough bike riding. I don't think you need to like go.
I went out for about 45. I went out for about 45 minutes with G, and he's just got the BMX bike, and like we went about 45 out and back, and like he's like, we should plan to do, Dad? I was like, what? We should ride our bikes to Montana. And I'm like, well,
if you're gonna go all the way to Bismarck, you might as well go to Montana.
Well, it's halfway, man. Jesus. I mean, Bismarck is it's 200 miles. We can do it in 2 days.
What else you doing? What else you doing? You might as well go to Montana. Yeah.
Well, I got to get back because Sarah doesn't want to be by herself. Because she ain't. Sarah's not gonna freak out. And Ale is too young. So just stuff like that. I'm just trying, like, cool. I'm just sitting around trying to think of like the craziest shit I can do. Because like if I can't do jiu-jitsu, because like people that do jiu-jitsu, like they're at least somewhat interested in crazy shit. So like, man, just be creative and like do something wild. Like you don't need to be around a crowd of people to like I mean, like to do something like that, to like ride like at least to like Castleton or Jamestown or something like that. You can get or Valley City. I mean, you can get there and back in a day, and just do it, or go hike, or throw on a backpack and go ruck like 12 miles or something. Just stuff to do. Like, cause what do we talk about jiu-jitsu a lot for? It's something. It's what's the benefit of it? It's hard, man. People ain't gonna do that. People don't do stuff like that. That's crazy. Like they nobody ever tests themselves. So go do something. Like you can't test yourself on the mat. Go do something else. Go ride, like go do 50 miles on the bike, do something, crazy. Go walk 10 miles, with a backpack on. Just something to like keep that fire, keep that, that self-challenging kind of thing going. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people are working out in the gym and everything like that, but they're home gyms, they're doing the little home workouts and stuff like in their in their yard on their jungle gyms and stuff, which is cool, for sure. But like it's like that wouldn't be mentally enough for me. Like I got to go do something nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice out. It's beautiful out. What else, like you said, what else are you going to do? Might as well go out, kayak and ride a bike and
You gotta watch.
Take advantage of the time. Take advantage of it.
Yeah. You're gonna sit and you're gonna binge watch Netflix for 5 hours. I mean, hours I can get the cast back on a bike.
Well, and the thing I've been telling people too is like, if when all this stuff is over and you don't come out better at something, you wasted the opportunity. Like, if you don't come out of here like playing piano better or adding something to your life, reading more books, taking advantage of it, man, shame on you. Because like this is such a gift in some ways, right? That's the whole reason this podcast even exists, because we got the time.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it for a while. I was like, all right, cool. We're doing it now.
We got it started now, because now we got to keep it going.
Exactly. And now it's like, okay, well, cool. This is sustainable. So let's keep doing it. But there's always other things that people can be doing, but you just have to have the initiative to go and do it.
Yeah, Bailey asked me the other, like he one online on Facebook the other day. He's like, "What videos have you been watching?" Or like, "What have you been studying jujitsu wise?" And I was like, I sat back and I was like, "Jesus, I haven't been doing anything jujitsu wise." I've been like, what I've been to like because I just talked about the physical shit, like the mental stuff I've been doing is I've really gotten back into Photoshop. I'm learning how to. I just bought a couple weeks ago. I bought a new Canon T6. Massive telephoto lens, like all kinds of shit. So like I'm getting ready to like really learn how to take. I've been watching YouTube instructionals on taking really nice photos and manipulating them and learning how to do all that fancy like filtering shit that like you see everybody like the photos like that really gritty. I guess it's called Dagon style or Dragon style. Now I just learned learning how to do that. I've been drumming a lot.
Yeah, I saw that thing back there.
Yeah, that's my 5-piece.
Nice.
There's my Joe Satriani Ibanez and my and we got the bells too.
Oh yeah.
I can't.
The whole setup.
Yeah, the percussion. Well, G does percussion in school, and he has to do he has to learn a new song every week, and then every Friday I have to record them. So I just jump in on the drums.
Nice.
It's been bells. It's been the xylophone and keyboards mostly. We have a nice Yamaha synth too, but it's up in his bedroom. Should bring it down here actually. But he just did his last xylophone stuff, so everything's going to be on the drums starting next week or tomorrow. Nice. We have to film it tomorrow. What's today? Friday.
Thursday today.
Today's Thursday. Yeah, he has to film. He has to film his progress every week because they give him stuff in the book to do. It's good times. Yeah, stuff like that. Cool. Just all kinds of shit. Just trying to do as much as possible, learn new stuff. I don't have television. That's another thing. Like we don't have TV. Like we have a bunch of televisions. We just don't have like cable or I got one television has one of those analog antennas on it. So we get a couple of channels for like the news and stuff, but that's it. We don't really watch television. So we got to find something to do.
Yeah, that's good. What do you got for us, Rob? Anything?
Nothing aside from the usual stuff. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends. We got some folks. It's been really cool as we get a lot of messages from people from outside the jiu-jitsu community that are just checking it out. Just, hey, we're just gonna check out the podcast because they know us. Yeah, so it's I had some friends of mine that they're just into fights and MMA and they like jiu-jitsu just as as a discipline within MMA, and they've been checking out the podcast and stuff too. So share it around if you think people think it's fun and they get some value out of it. Send it over to them. I mean, what else are we doing? Let's listen to some podcasts. Talk shit.
Yeah.
I didn't even say any wild shit about Shehan this whole time. Like,
almost got through without mentioning him. Almost.
I can't. I've been
so close.
I can't help it. It's in my nature.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
So when is Mac going to invest in a set of headphones?
I don't know.
We're almost
got
there,
right? He's got a really strong brand, though. He always wears the competition team shirt because that's the podcast shirt, right? Because the brand is
podcast shirt now. Yep.
And then he's just out here Gary V, just throwing in his earbuds and talking into the camera.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay.
I
That's
feel
cool.
like if we get to, I feel like if we get to episode 50, then I feel like, okay, this is a thing now, and I can invest in some headphones. But until then, I'm not going to spend any money.
Yeah.
Well, what does Gary Vee say? Like the first 12 episodes, like you can't even stop looking at them. The second 12, you can, you hate, but at least you can look at yourself. And then everything after that 24, like should be good. So yeah, we got a way to go still.
Right.
Oh yeah.
We're still working out the
pumping out that content, baby.
That's right.
Cool.
All right.
Well,
that's it. We're done for this time.
At Not Your Restaurant on the YouTube and Instagram. Facebook, it's just on. We just post the stuff on the Facebook on the Tribe page. We haven't created an actual Facebook page for it. It's on the gram or YouTube. And other than that, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thanks for coming on, Professor. See you guys later.
Excellent. Thank you.